A dozen hours of nonstop flying seems like a long time, except when you're packed together with a plane load of fellow soldiers, all hurtling towards what might be your final destination on Earth. Welcome and hello. My name is Raymond Schaff, and I'm the author of Confessions of a Level 9 Nerd. Thank you for sharing some of your time with me and my gang of nine. Yes, my book is for sale at Amazon.com, so please buy a copy. And after you read it, support your local business by taking it to a nearby bookstore and drop it on the discount pile on your way out. Now let's fly right into Confessions of a Level 9 Nerd, Chapter 3, Across the Pond at the Speed of Life. A handful of months before the 1967 Summer of Love began heating up American youth, I left my teenage years behind and headed to South Vietnam as a U.S. Army soldier. I was the right age for the right time of my life. Worried that my time might be up sooner than expected. Cool afternoon breezes, perfumed with jet exhaust, aimlessly swirled around the soldiers standing on the oil-stained tarmac. Moving at caterpillar speed, the long line of young men stretched up the boarding stairs and then snaked into the cabin of the big commercial airliner. A pause in the line gave me a few seconds to peer into one of the four jet engines that hung off the massive jet's wing. Barely awake, I watched as the turbine blades followed each other around and waited for the race to begin. With military precision, the ground crews scurried around doing their last-minute pre-flight preparations. I wonder if they had worked as quickly if they had to come along with the rest of us, headed to South Vietnam, to participate in the beleaguered country's slow descent into hell. I climbed up the stairway and ducked into the airliner's warm cabin, steeped in silent anxiety. The haughty interior colors of the contracted commercial jetliner did little to distract the scores of soldiers who sat detached from the world, cultivating their private thoughts. Maintaining a death grip on the manila envelope stuffed to capacity with my overseas transfer orders, I spotted one of the last open seats in the packed cabin. Anchoring my free hand on the cushioned headrest, I swung my entire body around and into the narrow, empty slot, while at the same time, and to my great horror, scuffed the spit-shine boot tip of one of the few soldiers on the plane returning to South Vietnam for his second tour of combat duty. I apologized for my scratching his boot as I began to cinch down my seatbelt for the long flight when he caught a glimpse of my paper order sending me to a U.S. Army Field Supply Unit. Heated from getting his boots scuffed, he began to huff and puff. "Real men patrol the jungles of Vietnam carrying M16s and Claymore mines, not pushing pencil on paper." Once again, my youth and inexperience caused my brain to allow unfiltered thoughts to flow out of my big mouth. Remind me of that fact again the next time you come in patrol begging for some M16 rifle replacement parts or additional bandoliers of Claymore mines," I shot back. My elevated response went unnoticed by everyone in the quiet cabin as the huge jet gently lurched forward after the ground crews gave the final nudge of approval. Then a few seconds later, the 4 whining turbine engines briefly announced their presence as the airliner began its slow, creeping roll past scores of small red and blue ground lights, guiding us to our white-knuckled ride out of America. I sat motionless, bracing myself for my seatmate's response when the aircraft shuddered. He looked out the port side window and uttered, "Rookie," just as all 4 engines violently exploded to maximum thrust, catapulting us down the runway, beginning our transformation from American soldiers into Vietnam veterans. Hours into the long, silent flight, we landed on a minuscule airstrip in the middle of the Pacific Ocean in order to give the jet's thirsty turbines time to drink their fill. The brief refueling stop whisked by as we slipped back up into the night sky, searching for the surrealistic reddish-orange Vietnamese sunrise. 3 more long hours passed before I extracted myself from my seat and wandered up the narrow aisle to a partially opened cockpit door. I got close enough to peer into the darkened area to get a glimpse of the instrument panel illuminated by dozens of glowing instruments that surrounded the pilot and co-pilot. A series of wraparound windshields framed an inky black sky studded with stars that extended out into forever. I was trying to absorb the details of every instrument and dial at one time when all of a sudden I saw the pilot looking at me through a small mirror that sat on top of the cockpit's main instrument panel. Before I could excuse myself, the pilot invited me in to look around. His kind voice seemed out of place in a military environment where growls and barks dominated normal speech. The captain allowed me to soak up the dazzling display of technology. After gawking for a few seconds, I apologized for taking up his time and backed away from the open cockpit door. The captain acknowledged my awe, seeming to understand, and with a slight smile on his face, advised me to buckle up tight when it was time to land, as he would be executing a steep downward slope when approaching Saigon. Returning to my seat, I pulled my seatbelt tight enough to rearrange my internal organs in anticipation of what was coming next for all of us on board the jetliner. A couple of fistfuls of minutes melted away before the pilot's voice crackled over the PA system, announcing our arrival. I grabbed both armrests tightly as the pilot stood on the brakes, sending us into a steep dive until we were about to crater, nose first, into the emerald green jungle that carpeted the horizon. My seatbelt cut into my hips as the irony of dying in South Vietnam at the hands of an insane pilot before facing enemy fire was racing through my brain. We violently leveled out at the last possible second and then bounced down hard, rolling to an abrupt stop. The monotonous 12-hour flight over the Pacific Ocean and beyond extended on a sun-baked tarmac in South Vietnam. The steward popped open the jetliner's door, allowing the heat-drenched smell of war to wash over the 100 soldiers packed inside our cabin. As we disembarked the jetliner, I lost interest in the powerful technology that would soon abandon us on the runway, as another captivating scene played out in front of me. My seatmates and I shuffled past a lengthy line of seasoned Vietnam veterans scheduled to board a different flight back to the world. Sardonic grins from faces wrinkled from a year's exposure to harsh jungle suns greeted each of us as we passed the American heroes on their way back. For a well-deserved journey home. Before my senses could absorb the new surroundings, we crammed ourselves into waiting transport buses. A sergeant in charge of loading the human cargo boarded the bus, hollering at the 7 of us standing in the aisles to get off as the bus exceeded its maximum capacity. My anger from being kicked off the armed transport bus vaporized hours later when I found that that bus was ambushed on the outskirts of the city, leaving bloody casualties headed for home before officially rising in South Vietnam. I was grateful that the first day of my 365-day tour ended without taking me along. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Here is a stupid smart, suspender snapping, level 9 nerd tip for those of you that can't seem to find a battery when you need one. Having one place to look for all of your batteries is a totally geek thing. Here is a battery organizer that will warm the hearts of any anal retentive person when it comes to finding any size of battery at any time. Here's a battery charger from the Sharper Image that recharges those batteries you thought you had to throw away or recycle. This should take care of all your battery needs. What a cool geek thing this is. And finally, it's time to unlock my wall safe for a safe off-the-wall story. One of my favorite computing jobs was teaching information technology courses at a local junior college. I began each new semester by arriving an hour early to the campus and preparing for the onslaught of new students. When everything was set up and ready to go in my classroom, I would put on a hoodie to hide my tie and matching suspenders and head down to the faculty lounge. 15 minutes before class starting time, I would slip on a pair of dark sunglasses and clandestinely wander into the technology complex. Strolling down the hallway, I began to mingle with a smattering of students waiting for my classroom door to be opened. As students began to form small groups, I would strike up conversations about how the instructor was a total geek, always late, and we were all going to get D's and F's because he hated students, especially freshmen. Freshmen were easy marks to spot, as they always had a death grip on their brand new textbooks and broadcast a deer in the headlights expression to anybody that looked at 'em. To ramp up the level of anxiety and give credibility to my comments about the teacher always being late, I waited to reveal myself until a couple of minutes past class starting time. The shocked look on all their faces was priceless when I produced a set of keys and opened the classroom doors while introducing myself as their instructor for the new semester. My classroom attendance numbers always remained high as students enjoyed the stories that I blended into my lectures with the technology outlined in their textbooks. I even convinced a number of students, down through the years, to change their major to information technology or teaching. I spotted one of the last packed seats that was open and was amazed that the packed seat could be open. Cut! I spotted an open seat because I was scared to death of flying. Cut! I opened a seat to see it was spotted from the last GI that took that flight. Cut!